Coming at you from the south side of Chicago, straight out of my mother's basement at my childhood home, I'd like to welcome you all to the Power to Persist. Jesse Jackson Jr., my brother.
Lamell McMorris.
Welcome to the basement, man. This is my childhood home. This is where it all started for me, right here in Woodlawn on the south side of Chicago. My mom is right upstairs, and welcome to the Power to Persist, the podcast. We are honored to have you.
It's my honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I was joking, before we started rolling. This is like a full circle moment, man. I was an intern when I was a graduate student at Princeton Seminary, spent a semester in Washington, D.C. at Wesley Seminary doing a congressional intern in your office. Full circle moment to now. I was telling everyone I'm a little nervous. This is kind of wild.
But you shouldn't be. We've been friends for almost 5 decades.
Yes.
And you've worked with my father long before you went to Princeton Theological Seminary.
Yes.
And long before you worked your way into the congressional office. And so we've been peers. You've got a mind that I've always respected.
Well, thank you, brother.
And you're serious about public service and the liberation of people. So I appreciate that. And congratulations to all that you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you. It has been an honor to work alongside you and to work alongside your dad. I think you know how much he means to me, and my life would not be what it is today without my time with both Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Jesse Jackson Jr.
And to distinguish between the two, after you've given that commercial, he would ask you for a contribution.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. No doubt about it. On rhythm, on point, on message, all the time. No doubt about it. So let me ask you a few questions if I can, and let's just have a little conversation. You have called this moment in your life a comeback. Why do you feel now is the right time to possibly step back into the public life?
I don't think it's a comeback as much as I do a continuation of unfinished business.
Okay.
I'm 60 years old.
Okay.
And I have some things that I want to accomplish for the country, for the world, and on a more personal level for members of my family.
Mm-hmm.
I want my children to see a different story, to write a new story, to write the correct narrative of who their father was, so that they too may have eternal memories.
I'm glad you brought up your children, because when you think about your children and resilience, this podcast and the book, and we're talking a lot about resilience and the power to persist. What lessons have you imparted to them around resilience?
So I've had to give this question of the power to persist and this question of resilience a considerable amount of thought.
Yes.
I've lived a life that's taken me to certain mountaintops. That same life has taken me to certain valleys.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it means to walk back up a mountaintop or to climb back up a mountain and try and stay there, but no person stays at the top of the mountain their entire life. On this question of resilience, I want to share with your listeners what I think is the path that has proven most effective in my life. When I think about inanimate objects and resilience, you think about pressure, you think about heat, you think about cold.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about organic or human forms in terms of resistance, you know that we cannot survive a head-on car collision. The human form can't do it. We can't survive an airplane crash, particularly if it's catastrophic. We can't survive a train crash. We can't step in front of a car traveling at 90 miles an hour and expect the human form to be resilient.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the power to persist and the power to be resilient, we're really talking about human emotion. We're talking about human psychology. We're talking about the capacity to cope with the circumstances that life presents to you. And as sure as I'm sitting here, there will be heat, there will be cold, there will be rain, there will be snow. There will be pressure from the universe that the same inanimate objects confront that we in the human form have to confront. And so more often than not, they present themselves in the form of shame. They present themselves in the form of blame. They present themselves in the form of guilt. They present themselves in the form of resentments and regrets. And what I think separates us from the animal kingdom is, while a duck may love its ducklings and while other animals show an affection or a love, if you will, for their offspring, the human form has the capacity, and what makes the human form human is its capacity, potential capacity, to deal with shame, blame, guilt, resentments, and regrets. There is no human being that can escape that dynamic. That is, if there is shame in your life, I already know there's blame and guilt. It may be self-blame, but there's guilt present in whatever form. If there's guilt in your life, I already know there's shame and blame. If there is blame in your life, the president accepts no responsibility for any behaviors, for anything that goes wrong. He finds someone to blame. There's blame in his life. But we've never really peeled back the onion to see what the guilt in his life is, or what the shame in his life is. But he blames everyone for everything, but inherent in being human, shame and guilt are also part of the equation. He's also trapped in a cycle, as all human forms are, in some form of resentments and regrets. So really the question about the power to persist for me, and the question of resilience, is one, the question of suffering. How much suffering can you handle? And the second immediate question that comes to mind is the capacity to suffer. Some people can't and don't have a capacity to suffer. And those without the capacity to suffer in the human form, they find themselves in suicidal ideation. Those without the capacity to suffer, they might end up using liquor or drugs or some other form of coping with their inability to suffer. But those who develop a suffering muscle, the capacity to suffer, not only can they carry their shame, blame, guilt, resentments, and regrets, but they can carry the shame, blame, guilt, and resentments and regrets of other people. And that's a rare leader. James Baldwin said about Martin Luther King Jr. in an article that he wrote for Harper's Weekly called "The Dangerous Road Ahead of Martin Luther King," who attended the same college that you graduated from, Morehouse College.
Yes.
And he says in that article that he was trying to find out what it was that made Martin Luther King Jr. tick, what made him who he was. He said, was it that he had gone to Boston University and had a PhD?
Yeah.
Baldwin says he certainly was an intellectual. He certainly could stand toe-to-toe with the best philosophers and scholars of humankind. He said, but it wasn't that. He said, he's certainly capable of preaching with the best of the preachers. Now, Dr. King can bring it.
No doubt about it.
James Baldwin said, no doubt about it. He said, and he could move a crowd, but there was no doubt about that. He said he was definitely perfectly situated in the black middle class, which the vast majority at that hour of African Americans had never experienced. His clothing, his suits, his demeanor, his education reflected it all. But he said, when Dr. King was very young, he struggled with depression. That it is written that he attempted suicide at age 8. I think it was written that he tried to jump out of a window and was saved or pulled back from the window. And he struggled with depression, with that being the initial evidence, Michael Dyson wrote, all of his life. Baldwin says, Dr. King recognized in his own suffering that the people he was speaking to were also suffering. And he believes that what made him tick was his capacity to connect his suffering to their suffering. And therefore they suffered in community. And when they suffered together, they then worked their way out of their suffering together. And that this was the, if you will, immutable characteristic of his ministry and leadership that made him different. His capacity to suffer alongside people. And in the community of suffering, he started making fun of Mr. Charlie. they all laughed about Mr. Charlie. And they said, Mr. Charlie comes up and talks to you early in the morning and says, Dr. King, what do you think of segregation? He said, I'm going to respond, I think it's an awful condition, Mr. Charlie, and if you could end it by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'd all feel better about that. But we wanted to come to an end by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Right.
So in that community of suffering that we're all experiencing segregation, or that we're all experiencing oppression in whatever form it may be in, for the LGBTQ, for victims of racism, for victims of genocide, for victims of the scapegoating of black men, or the prosecution and persecution of black men, in that suffering, when we suffer with them and not suffer separate and apart from them, a unique bond occurs. And if I should enter public life again, I'll take these examples with me, because a lot of pain is coming our way as a result of that, both in urban and rural areas. And so we are either going to have a leadership that suffers with us, or we're going to have a leadership telling us they're doing the best they can to fight MAGA, to fight Democrat. They're voting what they can vote, and we're counting on somebody to fight who is not suffering with us. So the capacity to suffer, it seems to me, determines the capacity to persist, the capacity in the human form to be resilient and to bounce back.
Kind of on that note, let's talk a little bit about how you see redemption and acknowledgement of your mistakes. And in that context that you just mentioned, walking alongside people who've suffered. What is the message to folks as they see you as a possible public servant again, and the lessons that you've learned?
Well, the first lesson I've learned is I believe in the cross. And I believe in the power of the cross. And
Especially as it relates to redemption.
I've seen the redemption story. Can't go to Easter, and I can't go through Good Friday every year for 60 years and not see the story. So now I have to find a way to apply the story to my life. The cross matters in the redemption story. It's not separate and apart. In fact, without the cross, it's not believable that another life is possible. You have to ask the woman by the well. You have to ask the stranger on the Jericho road. You have to ask the thief on the cross and the murderer on the cross.
In case folks forgot, he's a preacher too. In case everybody wasn't aware online, he is a preacher.
I'm a bootleg preacher.
Yeah.
It's that thief on the cross next to Jesus, and the questions raised by the murderer on the cross next to Jesus. And you think about, in the English, and not in the Aramaic, the Greek, the Latin, or the French, but in the English language, remember me, the thief asks of the master. Immediately, we say to ourselves, what? Remember me, remember me. Like, I don't want to be forgotten, like this is my legacy. But maybe your legacy is not that you were a thief or a crook. Maybe he was asking Jesus to put him back together again. Remember me. Put me back to the way I should have been before I found myself on the cross. Of course, that's in the English. I don't know what it would have been in the Aramaic, but we're going to have to put people back together. And we're going to have to put people who have been dismembered and no longer connected to the human family back together again. We're going to have to bring them together. And I think that for me, it's a big experiment because I'm going to have to take all of the blows and rehashing of the stories and the commercial attacks and expand my capacity to suffer in order to project a message that you too can endure suffering.
In my book, The Power to Persist, I share 8 simple yet powerful habits, a blueprint for transforming obstacles into opportunities and pressure into purpose. Just as they fueled my rise from the South Side of Chicago to a national stage. And on the Power to Persist podcast, I bring that blueprint to life. Your political stance today, if I must say, as someone who's been an intern and been a friend of yours for a long time, feels a bit more sharper and focused than when you were first in office. How has your time away from public life shaped your vision and your priorities now as a leader?
Suffering. I'm divorced. I've had to rebuild relationships with my children. I'm still constantly rebuilding relationship with my children. I have to remind them of the Christmases we did enjoy. They're all adults now. I have to remind them that they've never missed tuition, that the 3 squares they enjoyed a day when they were growing up and the happy moments in their lives before the cataclysmic fall from grace, before when they were the most popular kids because their father was a congressman invited to parties, and then suddenly they were no longer as young kids invited to parties, and they felt some shame, some guilt, some resentments and regrets about who they were that was not their own fault. The reestablishment of their personalities matters. Should I embark upon this campaign, to see the resilience in their father matters to the development of their personalities. I want them to get stronger when the episodes of life are presented to them. I want them to remember that their daddy could take it and that he could push through. That's important to their development should they ever fall from grace, given what I know to be true. But it's also, Lamell, the stories of the people that I met along the way. It's impossible to meet men on this journey, to meet families on this journey, and emerge from it the same as you were before you had this journey. My relationship with members of my own family are not the same. We see things differently. I have a perspective now. When I was in Congress, I did everything I knew to do for men and women who are returning from prison. Town hall meetings, jobs fairs, write them a letter, encourage them. I ain't never thought about they needed a pardon. I didn't realize the story didn't end for them after incarceration. I just thought they couldn't pick themselves up.
So it sounds like prior to your experience, your understanding was a bit superficial. Now you have a bit more depth.
I would argue, yes, that my depth has changed because of the experience.
Yes.
Because of the human beings that I came into in community with through that process. And my knowledge profoundly increased. For example, I talked with a young politician not long ago who is sponsoring legislation to encourage certain industries to hire, men and women who paid their debt to society. Well, in one of the industries that they are advancing legislation in, I congratulated him, but doesn't have anything. I don't want to be in the casino business. I don't want to work on a card table. I got a law degree. I got a seminary degree. I got 13 honorary doctorate degrees. He feels like he's doing something great. But what that brother right there needs coming out of that joint is a pardon so he can get a job doing anything he wants to do, not just at a casino or not just at a local bus company or trucker's job. What that brother needs is the ability to live his life, to go and sin no more, and to make judgments based upon what his own capacity allows him to do. Yes, I'm different in that regard. I wasn't fighting for other people's pardons when I wasn't in prison, and now I understand that 70 million Americans need one. I'll give you another example. A brother I know by the name of Dr. Michael Jones, who I've been working with, he was the #1 cardiac surgeon in the state of Louisiana, in the city of New Orleans, who was black. So all the poor black folk went to this cardiac surgeon to have pacemakers installed, valves replaced, etc. To be a cardiac surgeon means that you need to be reimbursed by Medicaid because there are 8 people in the operating room with you. No poor person can afford cardiac surgery without Medicaid, just not one. So after Obamacare was passed, and I stood in the chair of the House of Representatives when Democrats lost control of the gavel with all of the complaints from Republicans, Nancy Pelosi put me in the chair for the 8-hour debate for 5 hours to maintain order. The gavel is sitting in my living room, and you've seen it sitting there before. She awarded it to me. The way we paid for Obamacare was to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. It sounds like that's the right thing to do. Waste, fraud, and abuse. So Dr. Jones sent 200 people to home care. And his name popped up as someone who bills Medicare in large numbers for reimbursement. The government investigated and found 3 people, according to the government, who he overbilled. He said, I'm a surgeon. I'm not an accountant. My accounting team handles that. I'm in operations all day. I go from one operating room to the next. And they said, well, this is Medicare and Medicaid fraud. So they gave him 36 months in prison. He said, I'll pay it back. Wait a minute. I'll pay it back. Now, this gentleman spent his whole life to be a surgeon, not a crook. So he can never practice cardiac medicine again as a surgeon because no hospital in America will hire him because of Medicaid and Medicare fraud. The only way for him to get back at 55 years old in the operating room is with a presidential pardon. He doesn't want to work in a casino. He doesn't want to be a truck driver. And the skill set to become a cardiac surgeon requires so much education. We need this brother back in play, along with 70,000 other people who've been victimized by waste, fraud, and abuse. Medical professionals who never woke up one day saying, I'm going to school to be a crook one day. They are victims of the government's overreach and elimination of people in our society who we need to be practicing medicine. That's different today. So now I'm an advocate not only for myself, but I'm an advocate for him and other people who find themselves similarly situated.
Can I hit the rewind button for a second? You mentioned the resilient journey of your children because you are their father. What does the resilient journey look like to be a child of Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr.?
It's really interesting that you should raise that question, and I've never given it any public thought beyond the fact that you're recording it now. I might have to ask you for this tape later. What I know now is that every one of my brothers and sisters has a very different relationship with my family, with my father and with my mother. I have one sister who was born in 1963. I was born in 1965. When Dr. King was killed, for example, in 1968, I was 3 years old.
Wow.
Right? But just yesterday, I spoke with Hermine Hartman.
Yes.
And Hermine Hartman realizes that Santita was 5 years old.
Wow.
So when Dr. King was killed, Santita remembers it. I don't.
Right.
And Hermine said that she had to hold Santita at 5 because Santita kept asking the question, are they going to kill us? Are they going to kill us? I don't remember that. Santita's experience, which has profoundly impacted her life to this day, is different than mine. I didn't experience that. It's not in my conscious memory. Jonathan was born in 1966. He's even a step removed from both me and Santita in his understanding by the time he comes to a certain consciousness. Yusuf is born in 1970. By the time he comes to consciousness, he wants to be a businessman, and now he's working his way out of business back to Rainbow Push and to the ministry, and he's been very successful in business and is doing a great job at the Rainbow Push Coalition, but still his ministry reflects what he knows and understands. But being Jesse Jackson Jr. is different. I am my father's best friend. I'm also my father's staunchest private critic. I've never gone to the media with our discussions. I've always tried to make him better. Some of the things that he did wrong in public came back to haunt me in public. And then I'd say, y'all got the wrong Jesse Jackson. I remember getting elected to Congress in 1995, and I went to New York with Hillary Weinstein, whom you know, was my legislative director when you were there as an intern. And she also worked on Dad's campaign in 1988. And we go to the office of Edgar Bronfman, the chairman of Seagram's, and he wants to talk about Israel and the Palestinians.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I just got elected 2 weeks ago. I just got sworn in 2 weeks ago. And I'm here to represent people who don't have fresh water in Fort Heights, who have no options but to build an incinerator in Robbins, Illinois, who, as a result of the retail rate law in Chicago Heights, had to build another incinerator. So the south side of Chicago, no fresh water, incinerators. We ain't got no airports. We ain't got no Hyatt, no Hilton, no Fairmont, no hotels. Everybody goes downtown. No one's coming out our way. And then he says, yeah, but I really want to talk about Israel.
Yeah.
So he then moves in his office to open up 2 of the largest coming to America doors I've ever seen. He opens the 2 doors, and there are 300 Jewish representatives of the World Jewish Congress sitting there. And literally, when he opens the door, he and I are on stage.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey, everybody.
Right.
I'm from the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois. Thank you, Mr. Bronfman. All they want to talk about at that time was Israel.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I came here to share with Mr. Bronfman about these people I represent who don't have fresh water. Well, yeah, but see, and then one lady jumped up and said, but your father said, and your family been, and I'm like, wrong, Jesse Jackson. I'm the one in Congress. So I've had to live through it. And even in my role as a congressman, where I rose to being the vice chairman of the Foreign Operations Committee, I end up having a near 100% voting record on Israeli security. In fact, it was a 100% voting record on Israeli security and funding for Israel, which I still support. But I also struck the balance between, but we must have a 2-state solution. We must meet with the Palestinians. And I'm even in a position now to say that Hamas does not speak for the Palestinian Authority. They should have never done what they did on October 7th, because my life experiences with my father, the ups, the downs, the mountains, and the valleys have led me to be able to strike the balance between their security as well as their protection and their right to self-determination. Both matter in the scheme of things, not one or the other. Both matter. These people have been through something awful, from the Holocaust, from Pharaoh to the Holocaust, and we've been through something awful too.
Yeah.
They got an Exodus story. Pharaoh, let my people go, Moses said 6 times. And so do we, except for ours requires the changing of the Constitution. Our Holocaust story requires an executive order. So when we hear about executive orders, we read them carefully. We need an executive order to get out of slavery called the Emancipation Proclamation, because Congress won't act and the Supreme Court won't do anything about it. We are responsible, just like Miss Betsy Ross, for adding stars to the flag. 1 free state, 1 slave state, 1 free state, 1 slave. Kansas, Nebraska, the California Act, popular sovereignty going to the Western state, the creation of the Western states, how territories are brought into the Union is part of the... We know something about the stars on the flag, which means Kaepernick has a right to take a knee. Some of us have a right to hold the flag upside down because we're responsible as a people, for more stars on this flag than any other people whose history is not responsible for the addition of stars to the flag. So our story matters in this age where the president wants and seeks to write a new narrative.
I'm so glad you brought up Kaepernick, and I'm so glad you framed it in that way. How does that message, the message that you just gave, how do we, get the broader society to understand the connectivity of Kaepernick taking a knee, or the connectivity of young men reversing their jerseys or making demonstrations in sports or in entertainment, to the history that you just laid out?
I've spent a lot of time in preparation for this interview with you. And I'm counting on this interview being the biggest downloadable selling point of the history of the Lamell McMorris Show.
On your lips to God's ears. We both are counting on that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is not an accident.
And so are these people behind this camera. They all counting on that too.
Hey, don't forget about your friends. And that's truthful. I mean, I believe that it's methods like this. It's the extraordinary work that you've done and the consciousness, Lamell, that you've come to. I mean, PhD, got your master's degree, Morehouse man, thoughtful, reflective, and all of that doesn't come together in everybody.
Yeah.
It comes to consciousness now. I got to tell this little story. I was at the Morehouse College in the Martin Luther King Jr. Chapel.
Oh, Lord. I know
I
this.
saw all of
Here
these
we go.
pictures.
Here we go.
Every
Here we go. I know
black
that story.
preacher of significance from the history of preachers to the present has a oil painting hanging up in the Jasper Williams and Gardner Taylor and Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abner, Martin Luther King. Then I get there to the largest picture in the whole chapel, Lamell McMorris. So I turned to Dean Carter and I said, what's he doing up there? He ain't no preacher. And he said, well, he's a preacher of sorts. The biggest benefactor of the chapel is Lamell McMorris. I said, well, he is a good preacher, isn't he? So I say that to say, Lamell, that consciousness matters.
Yeah.
You're there because of consciousness,
Yeah.
right? And the consciousness that you bring to liberation theology, the fact that you use these airwaves to allow those of us who'd like to be interpreters interpret,
Yeah.
right? That we help cleanse the fountainhead of forgiveness and liberation theology in this theological space, which requires a historical narrative
Yeah.
that does not discount the Exodus story of the book, but also understands that the same God that is responsible for the Exodus story of the book is also responsible for our Exodus story.
Yeah.
And that Exodus story includes Frederick Douglass on July 4th, 1852 in Rochester, New York, and what to the slave is July 4th. That Exodus story shows me why we should not be celebrating and eating barbecue on Juneteenth. Why am I celebrating 2 more years of slavery? I mean, it's a day for reparations on that day that they did not tell us in Texas. And I told this to Sheila Jackson Lee when she was advocating for this bill on the floor of the Congress. And she was advocating for this bill on the floor of the Congress because of Al Edwards, who was campaign co-chairman for Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88 in the state of Texas, who was successful in making the Juneteenth holiday the state holiday in Texas. I said, but Sheila, making this a national holiday requires a massive national education campaign that what happened here is not right. If not, we're going to have parades and people with drums and celebrating Juneteenth and missing the point that 2 more years of slavery after the Emancipation Proclamation is unacceptable. And we're as upset about it as Jewish people coming out of slavery and Jewish people coming out of the Holocaust. And we expect our brothers and sisters in Judaism to understand and appreciate our story too. So when you target black members of Congress who take strong positions on matters of principle, you're playing in our Exodus story.
Yeah.
And we did not play in your Exodus story. We respect your Exodus story. Respect ours.
I have had a chance to see your dad as someone I looked up to as a kid and as a child of Push, then to an employee as special assistant. And as tough as he can be, there's a hero that I'll cherish and love. And it's been hard watching him age. As his son, how has his aging impacted you? Because I know how it's impacted me, but I'm not his namesake. I'm not his child. I see him in a way today, still sharp mind, still funny, trying to, because I spend so much time around him, I know when he's joking. But I must say, that's not the Reverend Jesse Jackson that I traveled with.
This is hard. When Dad was first diagnosed with Parkinson's, I was in prison. And he did not let me know.
Yeah.
He did not let many members of our family know. And he certainly hadn't announced to the press that he had Parkinson's because he felt that in prison I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I didn't know enough about the disease. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that he didn't tell me because I wasn't in the right mental space, still trapped in shame, blame, guilt, resentments, and regrets, and that would have only, without forgiveness of self, which I wasn't prepared to do, it was something that I wouldn't have been able to handle. So I thank Dad for recognizing that I'm not in inanimate form under pressure, heat, and cold, but that I was in the human form and I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
Difficult to persist under those circumstances, difficult to be resilient under those circumstances.
Yeah.
So he was patient with me. But when he did share it with me, it added value to the remaining years that he was conscious and able to verbalize and to talk. And maybe, as Jesse Jackson Jr., those were some of the most important conversations we've ever had. Watching the deterioration as a result of the Parkinson's disease, almost every 6 months, he is a completely different person.
Yeah.
What I implored upon him was to be remembered not in this state publicly, but to be remembered as the fighter that he was and that he is. But so much of his suffering with people and his own suffering and the joy that he found in working and being with people, he has to be around people, even in this state.
No doubt about it.
He needs leaning sideways, stand me up out my wheelchair. I don't want to be seated with whatever. He has to. He needs community to live.
Yeah.
He doesn't need money.
Yeah.
He doesn't even need health care to live.
Yeah.
He needs community to live because he has been part of a community of suffering. And I learned, and to some extent made sense of Baldwin's interpretation of King in watching Jesse Jackson. There are a lot of leaders who are not part of the community of suffering, even though I don't want him to be remembered for suffering in public without dignity. And Jesse Jackson should be known as a person of dignity.
Yes.
And not filmed or captured in his lowest moments to be exploited by someone.
Yes.
With people feeling sorry for him. My father would not like people to be feeling sorry for him.
No doubt
He ain't
about
that guy, man.
No doubt
This
about
guy got pride, man.
No
He
doubt
got
about
take
it.
pride to the last day, right?
No doubt about it.
So this guy's a real fighter. He goes into dark places where people have no light. He brings light to them. He's got a lot of courage. And, I want him to be known for that. And, the extent to which I can demonstrate even an ounce of that courage, I'm going to do my best.
What does Jesse Jackson Jr. do for fun?
Oh, wow. I'm a martial artist. I haven't really been able to get back to it since I got out of the joint.
Now, when you say you're a martial artist, like
I have
what
3
level?
degrees. I have 3 degrees in Taekwondo.
Nice.
My martial arts instructors have ranged from Jun Rhee to Nam Soo Hyung, and these are fairly notable Taekwondo practitioners. Jun Rhee was very close. If you Google his name, JhoonRhee, Jun Rhee, and Bruce Lee's pictures pop up together. He taught on Capitol Hill for 5 decades.
Wow.
And I received my first degree under him. I've studied Shaolin Tuan Kung Fu under Grandmaster Johnny Tai. His father most recently died, and have always been interested in the arts. I'm increasingly a farmer. I love to farm in my backyard and plant flowers.
Okay. I'm a plant dad too, by the way. So
yeah,
I can relate.
something green, does matter. I love the radio show that I do, which is for me fun. I don't get paid for it.
Tell folks about the radio show and why that's resonating with you so much, Ben.
So my girlfriend and producer, Gina Towns, came up with this idea of a radio show, even as a volunteer. And I volunteered some time for VON, and I messed around and became a little hit in Chicago. Tavis Smiley came on my show one day and said, "Hey, can you come to LA for a week and do your show?" And so we did it there for a week. Tavis said, "Hey, listen, an hour a day, now 2 hours a day." And so the idea of having a platform and an audience is something that Gina believed in. She thought that some of what we talk about here in this interview are some of the shows that we do on KBLA, Talk 1580. Download the app.
Yes.
On a daily basis from 12 to 2 on the West Coast, 2 to 4 Central, 3 to 5 Eastern time, every single day of the week.
Yes, sir.
We're trying to build that platform out. And I think that these forms of communication, Lamell, Dr. McMorris, matter at a time when the news and the broader medium are not telling our stories. So it is in this context that we get to tell our stories. And so we become purveyors of for people who don't read.
No doubt about
people who are not going back to school.
Yeah.
People who are not going to go get another degree. They're conscious, they're cognizant, but they need to hear a good word from authentic voices.
What's on your playlist?
I'm sorry?
What's on your playlist? What are you listening to? What music are you listening to? You get
Oh,
in
man,
the car
listen.
and you leave here. What you hit play? What it is?
Plies, 100 years. Co-defendant.
All right.
Plies.
All right.
But, a lot of the R&B, the classics. Gina has really been reintroducing me to Prince.
Okay.
And an appreciation of him. Everybody on earth knows that I'm an MJ fan. I'm stuck in an era, the early 80s. Matters to me, the whole Prince and the Revolution, Morris Day and the Time, Expose, Boy George and the Culture Club.
And you can, I've been in the car with you. We've ridden around. Like, you can hum a little, you can tune a little bit.
Bro,
man.
GQ,
you can sing a little
don't
bit.
tell anybody that I can sing. Lying to yourself. That's karaoke. That's karaoke. Ain't nobody ever accused me of being able to sing. But, that's my era. And, that's the soundtrack of my life. Of course, that's our playlist, right? Rick James, Tina Marie. That was my era, and I'm still right there. No disrespect to anybody in the Tupac, Biggie. No disrespect to anybody in the modern era, but them cats right there. I mean, they were bringing the smoke, and they really defined the culture. And that's another interesting point. Kerry Gordy has a really, really interesting documentary, Berry Gordy's son, called Sunday Best. Came out on Sunday on Netflix.
Okay.
And it really is the story of Ed Sullivan through the lens of Black people. And Ed Sullivan's niece, I believe it is worked with Kerry Gordy as executive producers of this program. It shows the best of Black talent, from Nat King Cole to Satchmo to the Jacksons to the Temptations to Nina Simone to Mahalia Jackson, and how Ed Sullivan really was a civil rights pioneer. And the time frame of the documentary is from the beginning of the Ed Sullivan Show through the civil rights movement and the changing dynamics. We think about Brown in 1954. We think about Emmett Till in, I think, 56. Rosa Parks, 56, 57. When she was sitting on the bus, a reporter asked her what was on her mind when she refused to give up her seat. She said, "I can't get Emmett Till out of my mind." So that's the time frame. Then you got Dr. King coming to her rescue. You got the Montgomery bus boycott. You got Selma to Montgomery. So you think about the time that Ed Sullivan is writing the soundtrack of that generation's life, not as separate and apart from what Dr. King is listening to, because he too has a soundtrack of his life.
No doubt about it.
But his soundtrack is on the Ed Sullivan Show. So when we match the culture of what Ed Sullivan was doing as a pioneer to introduce through television, little bitty screens like this, into white households, Black excellence, and you think about the soundtrack of our lives right now, where we're talking about Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Barber and Barbara Arnwine and Terry Hort Owens, and we're thinking about, Reverend Todd Yeary and all of these leaders who are stepping forward right now to command a response to the era of MAGA and of Trump. You also got to think about the soundtrack of our lives right now. So what is it? It's Freedom, by Beyonce. It's America by Prince. These songs that mattered to, it's Black Man by Stevie Wonder, as they write, our contribution out of American history, right? This soundtrack is being written right now, and it undergirds our activity. We don't reflect upon it that way. So when you ask me the question about the soundtrack, I think about the soundtrack that Kerry Gordy brought forward, that Mahalia must have listened to. Sam Cooke, Strange Fruit.
Yeah. Every generation has a soundtrack of the moment that correlates to the time.
Yes, it captures the spirit energy. And then when we hear it, we begin to reflect upon where we were.
And where we are.
And where we are.
Speaking of where we are, our time is coming to a close for this conversation. I promise, with your permission, to have you back. But I must say that I would like to see you return to public service. You were a great public servant when I worked with you, and I don't think I'm alone. What do we need to do to get you to cross back over to the other side?
Well, I'm 60. I have in my bones one last real shot at public life. I shall never forget when Greg Calhoun, the late Greg Calhoun, came and visited me at Federal Prison Camp Montgomery. And we were walking around the yard holding hands. That might seem pretty peculiar, two men holding hands in a prison yard. Many of the men who came and visited me, from Otis Moss III to Reverend Joe Lowry, to more than 25 members of Congress, came to visit me at one time while I was in prison. They came for the Selma to Montgomery anniversary march. When President Barack Obama marched as president. And they came on their own plane, a U.S. government plane. And the warden's office came and got me and said, the warden would like to see you in his office. They escorted me to his office. And I sat down waiting for the warden to come out. I had no idea what it was about. The warden said, please come with me. He opened up his conference room, and there was Sheila Jackson Lee. There was Elijah Cummings. There was Emmanuel Cleaver. There was Maxine. And 25 members of Congress. I began crying. It was surreal. And we had a wonderful time, John Lewis told me when I got out of prison, he wanted to be there, but it was, his
That's
day.
his weekend.
His day in Selma.
Yep.
He wanted to apologize to me. He was very frail when I saw him at that Black Caucus when he shared that with me. He was wearing a kind of blue dashiki pants that matched and everything. And I said, no problem, Uncle John. I think about this moment, and I think about the history that we know, the history that we share, and I think about the incoming freshman class. And I think about even the scores of people that will be running for Congress should I embark upon this time, that I'm not even in my mind going to be unkind to them if I decide to run. They need to learn something that I can share with them in these debates about what the expectations the people have for them. And I may never get my phone call returned from them if, in fact, they do become the congressman. So I plan to use the debates to educate them on what they can expect.
I love it.
And let them learn something. If I get lucky and get the opportunity to get reelected to Congress, maybe in that case, the people will say, we got to send this Negro back to Congress because this Negro right here is the only one that can remind people of this history, right? I mean, these young cats, they want to do something, but they don't know what they're talking about, right? And I don't say that in any kind of negative way. It's just that the institutional memory of this life does matter. And some of us, including yourself, Lamell, are part of the bridge between what you saw traveling the world with Jesse Jackson and what some other people think they know they saw about Jesse Jackson. And either we're going to step in that gap and help them understand it and pass that on, or we're not. And I find great hope in that possibility. I also think that some of our members of Congress hang around too long.
Yeah.
I think they need to get to getting, man. And I think Aretha said it in a couple of her songs. You need time to get to stepping, y'all. Make some room for some other folk and assume some tutelage and some responsibilities. I wouldn't mind having a couple of these old members of Congress. If I had my resources right, I'd hire them as my chief of staff.
Yeah.
Or offer some of these former members of Congress the chief of staff position in your office.
Yeah.
Respectfully still refer to them as congressmen, but you need to learn some of what's in his head and stop assuming that you know what you're looking at. The voting rights of 1965 has gone through a number of changes. And every time it changes, it dilutes the voices of black people. In 1965, when this district that I represented was drawn, you could have at 80% of the district being black, Gus Savage.
Right.
You know, by the time 1992, 1988, 94 roll around, you end up with Mel Reynolds, district about 60% black.
Right.
Right? Now the district is 49% black and about 50% MAGA. And so what kind of congressman are we electing who's going to be talking about how this district started out as majority minority and now the congressman represents half of us and half of y'all? How do you represent people in that context? You know, and how do you represent them with integrity? So we have to find the things that we agree on and in principle represent the things we don't. That is, this community doesn't have fresh water, needs new pipes. Your community doesn't have fresh water and needs new pipes. I'm going to work on both. But I'm not with this agenda right here, and I'm for these women over here having control over their bodies over here. And so we have disagreements, but on the core things to which we share, we can work together.
Jesse Jackson Jr., my friend, my brother, thank you for joining me on The Power to Persist. Thank you for being the best example of what it means to be resilient.
I'm trying, brother.
Glad to have you, man.
Thank you, man. It's an honor to be here.
Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening so you stay in the know about future episodes. See you next time, my friends.